Warning: the Savage Nation contains adult language, adult content, psychological nudity. Listener discretion is advised. And now, America's most exciting radio talk show, The Savage Nation, home of borders, language, culture. And here he is, winner of the National Radio Hall of Fame Award, Michael Savage.
To announce something from the Savage Nation, something that I didn't think would happen, but as a result of the victory in Georgia, I had a long conversation with my publisher, and both the publisher and I are relaunching Trump's War, and that is to rearticulate what we voted for. This is a specific book, not a generic book. This book is not about bashing liberals. That's been done for 25 straight years. And the reason I'm asking you, as my audience, as my loyalists, as my army, to go out and take out your copy of Trump's War, brush it off, dust it off, take it to work. Don't be afraid of the Democrats. You're protected by the American legal system. Bring it to work. Put it on your desk. Give it to an undecided. But most importantly, would you please give a copy of Trump's War to those who voted for Trump and walked away from him over the last several months? Trump's War is more important now than ever before. The Georgia special election proves we were right, that America wants real change. And by the way, Trump's War is the only roadmap on the market. None exist but this book. And we need to remind those in charge what they were voted in on, what the platform is, what's Trump's War about. Okay? This is our agenda. What parts of Trump's war is the president implementing? What parts is he doing the opposite of? Who is preventing the president from fighting this war, our war, on our terms? There are many things to talk about. Very proud to announce again that we are relaunching Trump's War to rearticulate what we voted for. It is the only book available right now and in the near future that will remind you what this revolution is about. Anyone can bash liberals. It's an old story. It's been done for 25 years. Liberals are bad, conservatives are good. We all know that. But it's an old message. The world is at war. We woke up after reading that another Muslim in Belgium, suicide vest, did his Allah Akbar dance. Thank God they shot him dead and didn't bring him to justice. He got his justice. I'm sure he's enjoying his virgins. The Muslim stabbed a cop in the neck at an airport in Michigan, screaming Allahu Akbar. But again, don't tell that to the girls at CNN. They don't want to know it's related to a certain, let us say, philosophy and political system. Mainstream media continues to bury and deny the fact that radical Islam has been at war with the West for quite a long time, and that all of our lives are in danger. Now, many of you have listened to my radio show over the years. You know that I've recognized this from the day I began in radio over 20 years ago. I have written about it. I have talked about it. Some of our presidents do understand it. Unfortunately, most of the phonies in the media, the cowards, the fake pacifists, are in denial. Deny, deny, deny. Andy Cooper puts his neck in the ground like an ostrich. And they put us all at risk. What do you think it's going to take to awaken America to the danger we are in, to stop the flood of, and I'll say it, I will say it, the flood of Muslims from coming into this country, as Donald Trump said he would do during the campaign? Yes, I am singling out a specific group of people amongst whom there is an inordinate amount of individuals who are either radicalized before they get here or become radical once they are here. What did Trump say he would do? He would ban Muslim immigration, quote, until we can figure this thing out. It's in Trump's war. It's not only his battle for America, it's your battle for America. And as I said to you, when the book came out, it went right to number one on the New York Times list, despite the fact that I did almost no media. Nobody would have me on with this message. But you did it. Many of you went out and bought multiple copies, and I need you. The Savage Army was just ennobled with the special election in Georgia, where the Democrats poured in an inordinate, unheard of amount of money to run an unknown candidate against a Republican, thinking that this unknown stooge would win. Well, Pelosi's stooge lost. Pelosi's stooge lost by a large margin. As Lincoln said, you can fool some of the people some of the time, Nancy, and you can fool some of the people all of the time, Nancy, but not everyone lives in San Francisco. In the real America, you can't fool them all of the time. This was a mandate for our revolution. Make no mistake about it. You don't need to ask the media gurus what it was about. It is a mandate, a clear mandate. They spent a fortune. They ran a young guy, and they lost. It's a mandate for everything that Trump said he would do. It is a mandate for all of us deplorables, and we must act now. What we can do to advance our agenda now that we have strength again, simple. For one, we need to know what our agenda is. How many of us actually remember what Trump promised and what we voted for? I do. I have a memory like the elephant that supposedly represents the Republican Party. That's pretty good. It's all in Trump's war. And that is why I'm asking you to go out and get your copy, give it to a friend who does not know what the war is about. If you don't want to buy another copy, send your copy to a family member who is a liberal or an undecided. Or more importantly, and this is very critical, to someone who has voted for Trump but moved away from him because of the constant drumbeat of hatred from the phonies in the media, who are not only trying to destroy him and our agenda, but also inadvertently kill all of us by denying the war that we are in, a war that has been started by radical Islam 1,000 years ago. The war that goes on and on and on. Whether it's a bomb in Brussels or a cop being stabbed in Detroit or gays being killed in Orlando, it's always Allahu Akbar. No matter what Andy and the boys do at CNN. No matter what that creature on MSNBC does, it doesn't matter. The reality is, this is the reality. What is it going to take to awaken the world? Well, you are the Savage Army. You are the trumpets. You are an individual trumpet. I need each of you to sing as loudly as you can. And I'm imploring you, I'm asking you to go out and buy another copy of Trump's War immediately. Go and buy it in a bookstore first. I prefer a bookstore. And if it's not there, demand it. Get it back on the shelves. And if you can't find it, buy it today on Amazon. I prefer a bookstore first. Why? Because that will send a message to all those people who walk through bookstores. And our message will remain alive. This is my message to you today on the Savage Nation. It's my main message. There are others. Now, there are issues that I studied that I'm going to share with you on why and which played huge parts in the Republican triumph in the Georgia special election and why she won. Yeah, the Dems went home with their tails between their legs. But okay, they took a beating, a real big one. They outspent Karen Handel. They put a pretty boy in there. He should be on CNN. I mean, I'm sure he has a career now on CNN. They get him a pair of clear glasses to make him look as intelligent as Andy Cooper. And the next thing you know, he's a commentator. They lost, though, and it is a mandate on Trump. It is a mandate. John Giese of Newsmax studied it, and he said Planned Parenthood played a huge part. So don't think the abortion issue is dead. You know, from sandals to scandals in 2 generations is what I'm really interested in. I read that Kirk Douglas's grandson, it's actually a sad story, Cameron Douglas. He's the son of actor Michael Douglas. Now, I love the acting of Kirk, the grandfather, who's 101. I like the acting of Michael Douglas, great actor. And look, it's sad. It's nothing to gloat about. Cameron Douglas, it could happen to any of us, grandson of the father who started the whole deal, violated the terms of his probation after being released from federal custody in March. He learned that the kid, Cameron Douglas, he's 38, had his 5-year drug sentence extended in 2011 after he was caught with drugs in prison, was caught with marijuana in his system in April. All right, I'm not going to go into this. I'm not going to throw the book at him. He's a heroin-addicted son of the Oscar-winning actor. It happens in a lot of families. And what I'm saying to you is this. When I read this story, I thought of the saying from Britain, from sandals to sandals in 2 generations. There's an old saying in England that families go from sandals to sandals in 2 generations. That let us say, a man starts a family fortune. The son picks up on it and builds on it. And by the next generation, they go back to sandals. He squanders it or destroys the family. It seems to happen over and over again, no matter what your culture is. More so in the West than anywhere else. So I want to change it slightly from sandals to scandals in 2 generations. From sandals to scandals in two generations. Do you know someone who has, or who did, inherit money and squander it and ruin the family name? There used to be a thing called a family name. I don't know if that still exists. I still believe in it. I'm very lucky so far. I have great children. But we don't know what comes down the line. I mean, I'm not trying to throw an onus on things, but I'm asking you a question. It's nothing to gloat about. Are you yourself one of them? Did you destroy your family? Even though you were given an inheritance, how did you screw up? There are others. The fact that Muslims stabbed a cop at a Michigan airport screaming Allahu Akbar, and they're not reporting it in the media. We're in danger here. The number one issue, by the way, to most Americans is not the economy, it's national security. That's what Trump ran on. Number one, build a wall, stop the flood coming in from Mexico. I'll say it again. Number two, ban Muslims. That was his campaign. That's a factor. I wouldn't say it. That's why I wrote Trump's War, to remind all of you what the national plan is, the battle plan is. And no one has defined what America is better than I have, which is defined by borders, language, and culture. There's no better definition. Can you think of a simpler and more clear description of what defines a nation, or how a nation is defined? Oh, anyone could write paragraphs and sentences that you'll never remember. I don't care whether you're living in Syria or America or Argentina or China or Japan. Your nation is defined by its borders, by its language, and by its culture. That is what I will be remembered for. And that is why I wrote Trump's War. I need to remind Donald Trump that that's what we voted for. We didn't vote for Jared Kushner. I have nothing against him. I don't know him. But I don't know how he became a senator on a special mission to the Middle East. All of a sudden, he's a special envoy. That's unbelievable. I never voted for the guy. I don't know who he is. He's going off to save the world now in the Middle East. Who elected this guy? Where'd he come from? He married the boss's daughter, but he was smart. He married the boss's daughter in advance of the election. That was even smarter. You got to hand it to him. Maybe he's smarter than I think. Maybe he has some special insight. Maybe he knew that Ivanka's father would be president. I don't know. Maybe he has some special way of seeing, a special algorithm somewhere in a tower. He's a smart guy, but who elected him to go to the Middle East? Where is the idiotic Congress on this? Where is the more I see this Congress, the more I realize that they're worthless. I've always had a distemper for politicians to begin with, as you well know. I've always been an independent. I was never a Republican, never worked for a Republican. You can see why. But what is this? They didn't vote for war, and we're at war in Syria. Where's the War Powers Act? They didn't say, yes, send Jared Kushner over there as a special envoy. What is he, Jesse Jackson all of a sudden? What is he? All of a sudden, he's Jesse Jackson or Dennis Rodman now. Dennis Rodman goes to North Korea, and again, the morons in Congress say nothing. They're busy playing baseball. That's what they do for a living? That's all they're fit for, is to play baseball. What else do they do? Nothing. And do special interest things. Look at John McCain. We found out the money flows into him from George Soros. Not as dumb and as senile as I thought. He went where the money was. No wonder he was a Democrat in hiding. He was paid to be so. A carpetbagger, a bagman. That's all. I'll be right back.
Savage.
The Savage Nation is sponsored by Swiss America, the only company I trust with my financial future. Call 800-289-2646 or SwissAmerica.com. A big victory. Don't let the media tell you it's nothing. It's a huge deal. Frankly, I was a little nervous because if they had won with that Macron lookalike, the pretty boy who stood for nothing just by pumping money into the election, you would have something to be worried about. But don't worry about it. The average American still knows what's what. The average American still knows that terrorism is the number one problem. Jobs are the number two problem, okay? There are number one and two problems. And the number one reason Trump won is because he said two things that attracted our attention. One, war with Mexico, which I haven't forgotten. He may have forgotten it, and the Goldman Sachs advisors may have forgotten it, but we haven't. And number two, yes, he's going to ban Muslims from coming in because most terrorists, unfortunately, come from those countries that were on his list. I mean, he wasn't picking them out of the air. Never mind what the rats in the media tell you racism. It has nothing to do with racism. It has to do with survivalism. Period. End of story. And that brings us back to why I told you that we are, again, today, my publisher and I announcing the relaunch of Trump's War. It's to rearticulate what we voted for. And I've asked you to take your copy, and I know many of you bought it. It was number one. Give it away. Give it to someone who either voted for Trump and has now moved away from him, or give it to someone who didn't vote for Trump who needs to be reminded what our agenda is. You may find out that they agree with you more than they disagree with you. Or if you don't want to give your copy away, go buy one. Well, it cost you the price of a couple of hamburgers. Trump's War, his battle for America, it will remind you what the book was about. No one has articulated it more clearly than I, who has been called the godfather of Trumpomania, which is the wall, check, taxes, check, tariffs, check, deportations, Obamacare, guns, military strength, schools, abortion, religion. It's really, really clear. And while most in the chattering classes around the world dismiss Trump's campaign, I, Michael Savage, champion Trump's platform because that is my platform, and I helped him galvanize the support of disaffected middle Americans left behind by the globalist central planners in their distant capital. And let me tell you something, my Savage army of listeners, I'm very proud to tell you that when I went, at Mar-a-Lago a few months ago, the president, when he walked in with his entourage and Secret Service, when I jumped up and said, whatever I said, he put his arm around me and he said, to the whole crowd, without this man, I wouldn't be president. So you know what? Maybe you can hate me for it if you want. But I'm still proud of the fact that I deterred you and others from voting for Hillary. Or, if you want to put it another way, I took the disaffected deplorables who wouldn't have voted to begin with, and I asked you to go vote. So in either case, I thank you for voting. Now, I know many of us are disappointed because of his about turn on war and his about turn on not giving us taxes yet, but it's early. Maybe if we reinvigorate the electorate, the base, he will do what we asked him to do, and maybe he'll get rid of some of those liberals around him. I don't know. All I can say to you, it's more important now than ever to remind them of what we voted for. And I happen to know that Donald Trump listens to this show intimately with his big job, and we want to thank him for doing his job, but we want him to get back to what we voted for, period, end of story. And we're also talking about from sandals to scandals in America. And it was triggered by the story of Cameron Douglas, the felon son of actor Michael Douglas, who again violated the terms of his probation after being released from federal custody in March. He was caught with marijuana in the system. Now, you're saying, well, what's different between him and the average person? Nothing really. Justice should be blind. I'm not saying because he's an actor's son, he should get special treatment. But the family and his lawyers are asking for another chance. And you know what? I feel the same other chance should be given to other people who were in on drug charges. The criminals are the drug dealers, not the drug users. That's where the problem lies, in the drug dealer, not the drug user.
Savage.
Order is out. He has the worst advisors in the history of any president in my time. There's no balance. It's lurching. It's like lurch. Why did he start with the ban on Muslims? Very important, yes, but not the most important thing, no. I wanted tax reform. I'm being killed by the government, robbing me blind. I'm an immigrant son. I started out poor. I hate giving the government more money than I have to. I hate it. But I pay every dime I have to pay, and I hate it. It makes me sick. I thought a fiscal conservative was going to lead the country, a businessman. Now, you wake up and you realize that one man, Jeff Bezos of Amazon, is now buying Whole Foods for $13 billion. Have you ever seen a monopoly like this in your life and Trump does nothing? Why is Trump permitting Jeff Bezos to take over the entire American economy? Do you want three companies controlling the whole country? Amazon, Google, and one other stupid company like Facebook running the whole world? Trump was supposed to stop these gangsters. How can Jeff Bezos buy Whole Foods without any interference from the Justice Department Antitrust Division? Now, we learned that, I believe it was Donald Trump had dinner with Jeff Bezos. Wasn't that true? Was that reported? Oh, that leaked to me? I wasn't supposed to get that leak? Oh, yeah. Yeah, there was a little dinner up there in the White House. I guess I wasn't supposed to say that. Now he's buying Whole Foods with no interference from Trump's antitrust division. In fact, the one person who was supposed to take on these monopolies in the new antitrust appointment was pushed out of the job there. Instead, they're going to put a patsy in there. This is very bad. It's anti-competitive, it's anti-American, it's monopolistic, and you don't have to be a conservative to agree with me. You know, many of you hate me. You got to understand that you probably love me, because if you actually thought about what I'm saying, you agree with me, especially about guys like Jeff Bezos, who, I am sorry, is bigger than Rockefeller at his peak. Rockefeller and the other, what were they called at that time? The railroad barons, the oil barons, the coal barons, the robber barons, I believe they were called. America had enough of them. They gobbled up everything in their sight, every farmhouse, every silo, every tree, every creek. Everyone became a slave of these giants until eventually America had enough, and there was a populist uprising, and a war hero named Teddy Roosevelt ran on a populist platform of America First. He didn't call it that, but his number one campaign promise was bust the trusts, which means break up the combines, which means break up Google, Facebook, Microsoft, and Amazon, because they're getting too big. They were too big when Obama was in power because they bought him like the puppet he was. And now what? They own Trump? You watch and see the coverage of Trump in the Washington Post, owned by Bezos, get nicer. You wait and see. There's some big news stories, some of which are going to get me sick. And I don't know if I could even tell them to you, because this is the end of the road for me and Donald Trump in one area. Trump is allowing 800,000 Dreamer immigrants to stay in the U.S., which is a complete reversal from his campaign vow to deport the Dreamers. Now, what are Dreamers? Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, or DACA? What does that mean? Why has Trump turned around on this? These people are never going to vote for him or a Republican. Hundreds of thousands of early enrollees in the program were facing uncertainty about their future status. 800,000. How do you feel about that? I don't think he should have done this at all. He said he wouldn't do it. He's gone back on this. This is a reversal. He's gone back on his word. What is this all about? Why is he doing this? Who would advise him to do this? Why would he do a thing like this? What is this, a slow motion program of amnesty? Is that what he's doing here, a slow motion amnesty program? Is that why you stopped listening to talk radio, because you voted for him and got stabbed in the back? I mean, come on, let's level. I know what's going on in this country. I feel I'm getting a lot for the money compared to her. Okay, you say, well, that's not enough. It is a lot. It is a lot. First Amendment, Second Amendment. Let's start with those two big ones. Did he give me everything that I thought we would get? No. Am I going to get a little bit more? Yes. What did I tell you towards the end of the primaries, as Trump started to be more fleshed out as a candidate and his politics were seen for what they really are? What did I tell you? I told you he comes from a liberal New York background, and we're probably going to get, at the end of the day, I said 20% of what we want from him. Am I right or wrong? I said that. It's on record. I'm not going to go find it and prove it. At this point, we're getting about 20% of what he promised. That's all. So is that better than her? That's 120% better than Hillary Clinton. So therefore, if you do the mathematics, we're doing well. Given that we have a corrupt political system filled with phonies and liars, that only the phonies and liars rise to, who else would want such a job? I wouldn't want a job like that. I never wanted to be in politics. I couldn't take it. It's worse than being a lawyer. There's nothing worse than being a politician next to being a tort lawyer in the United States of America. Next to that would be a hedge fund operator. Next to that would, oh, come on, you know I'm joking with you now. But the fact of the matter is, I wouldn't want to go into that business. How do you get up every day and have to put up with the lies and hatred of the other party who are worse than you are? How do you get up and take a woman like Nancy Pelosi seriously? Or a guy like Charles Schumer? I read you yesterday the donors to Charles Schumer. Here's a guy who makes believe he's against the millionaires and billionaires, just like Bernie. Cut from the same piece of corned beef as Bernie Sanders. Schumer is cut from the same pastrami as Bernie Sanders. Millionaires, billionaires. So Sanders didn't learn how to speak English properly. Schumer did. Schumer, I think, went to Harvard. Sanders went to the NYU School of Gutterism. I don't know where he went. But the thing is, it's the same story. Class warfare, race warfare, Medicare, Medicaid, and the environment. That's all. And abortion, throw that in. That's their whole platform. But if you listen to Schumer, you'd think he believes it means a word he says. I read you his donors. They're all Wall Street banks and Wall Street brokerages. What in the world do you people think when you're voting for him? What did you think you would get? And we go down the line. Okay, so it's full of phonies. We know politicians lie. That's why we hate them. In plain English. So is Trump different? No. In plain English, no. Why do you want more from him? Why? Because he said he'd give us more, number one. And number two, we voted for him for one reason. Because he said he wasn't a politician, which he wasn't. I told you he wasn't. For a year straight. Had him on the show, wrote Trump's War, bestseller. I outlined everything that I said he was going to do and what he must do. Some of it we're getting. Much of it we're not getting. For example, he also did a big thing on Cuba. He's reversing all of Obama's Cuba policies, which is a good thing to do. But does that really matter to me? Who is he catering to by reversing Obama's Cuba policies? Who is he catering to? The Cuban community in Miami? That's a big enough constituency to worry about. Why is that so important to Donald Trump? That he'd waste valuable political currency on an issue that is of no value, no interest to the average American. Listen, I'm going to tell you something. I know people in this country, very smart people, who are as cynical as I am, if not more so. They voted for Trump for one reason. You know what they wanted? Tax relief. They wanted tax relief, tax relief, tax relief. You might call them fiscal conservatives. They said to me, I don't care about all these other issues. I don't care about gays. I don't care about gay marriage. I don't care about abortion. I don't care about any of the social issues. I'm a fiscal conservative, they said to me. I voted for him for one reason, fiscal conservatism. I wanted lower taxes and fewer regulations. Why has he not acted on reduction in taxes? Well, he's being misadvised. Here we are, surrounded by thuggery. Thuggery on the left, posing as champions of the poor. Thuggery in the business world, posing as good businessmen when they're no different than history's most notorious despots. Who, although the notorious despots of the past, and I don't have to give you their names, you know who they are, I don't have to give you the names, they did transform the world by using terror, tyranny, and mass murder. I'm not saying that these businessmen are using terror or mass murder, but they are using tyranny. They're using the tyranny of massive capital to crush opponents and to crush competition. In that sense, they're thugs. I don't care who they fund. I don't care how polite they are while having dinner. They're thugs. They're no different than the Russian oligarchs who had to flee Russia because of their crimes against the nation. Now we wake up, and there's one of them. This guy has no limit. Amazon is now becoming the biggest monopoly in American history, buying Whole Foods for $13 billion. What does he want to do now, drive supermarkets out of business? He wants to drive Safeway out of business, Sprouts out of business, farmers markets out of business. It's not enough for that pig. It's not enough for what he has. A government's supposed to control somebody like this. Instead, he's invited to dinner. Now, what's intriguing here is that I could be crushed by Jeff Bezos with one phone call. He could buy the company that I am distributed by, and I would have no radio show. They'd have to buy me out. I'd be reduced to what Bill O'Reilly's doing. How's he doing these days? In other words, that's what monopolies do. They own everything. Now you understand the dangers of monopolies? It cuts both ways, left, right, and center. You can't let anyone do a thing like this. There was a time, for example, that owners of movie theater chains could not also own studios. You don't even know about those days. There was a firewall between the ownership of movie studios, which made the movies, and theaters, which exhibited the movies. Why? Because they didn't want an interlocking system where there was no competition. So the government that at that time was more responsive to the needs of the people. They didn't permit that monopoly to grow. Then slowly it got eroded, and the gangsters of Hollywood eventually wound up owning everything, including theme parks. So now we have the same thuggery going on in the media. There used to be a time when a company could not own more than a certain number of radio stations or TV stations or both in a single market because of monopoly. What happened to that? Gone with the wind. Now we wake up, newspapers, magazines, book publishing, movie distribution, movies, food, water. I'll own the air you breathe because I'm a big man, and I'll take the air out of your nostrils because I am a big man. So here we are. And what is Trump doing about it? Having dinner with him. Has that been reported? I don't know if that's in the news yet. No, Rosenstein didn't tell me about it, no. But a little dinner, yeah, Bezos and old Don. Watch the coverage and see if I'm wrong. See if the coverage of the Washington Post, now known as the Amazon Post, to listeners of this program, becomes more balanced about Donald Trump. Little deal was done over the ice cream. Vanilla, chocolate, strawberry. Try this, Jeff. See the chocolate syrup. You like the vanilla? You like a chocolate? A very nice dinner. And the next thing is he gobbles up. The next day the announcement is made he's gobbling up Whole Foods with no interference from Donald Trump's antitrust division. Does that matter to you? It should. More so than Cuba. More so than gay marriage. More so than any of the social issues because they're eating you alive. It's called fiscal conservatism. This is called fiscal gangsterism. In my opinion now, one man's opinion, small talk shows, little guy, one radio show, couple hundred stations. I could buy him up. I could crush him. Who owns that guy? Who is that big mouth on WABC I'm listening to? Who is this guy saying I shouldn't be able to buy everything I want? Find out who owns him. I want that company now. I want that company now. I want that guy off the air. Well, you can't do that. He has a contract. I'll buy his contract. I pass more gas than he makes in a year. I'll buy him out and throw him out. That's what you want in the country? That's what you're going to get in this country because we have unbridled insanity ruling not only the airwaves, but ruling the business world, and that's not what we wanted. Trump swore was supposed to reverse all of this, wasn't it? I'll be right back.
Savage.
The Savage Nation is sponsored by Swiss America, the only company I trust with my financial future. Call 800-289-2646 or SwissAmerica.com. There's a hotel in Cuba named the Havana Riviera, and it's located on the the Malecon waterfront boulevard in the Vedado district of Habana. What's interesting about this hotel is the Havana Riviera was originally owned by mobster Meyer Lansky, the Jewish gangster, who built it in Cuba. If you ever saw The Godfather when he says, Michael, we're bigger than U.S. Steel. Remember that great line on the roof of Havana? Michael, we're bigger than U.S. Steel, as they give him the birthday cake. You remember the Meyer Lansky character played by the great acting coach? So anyways, he takes all the money he parlayed from murder, gambling, prostitution, drugs, his whole life, the little mobster, saved all of his money with his gangster friends, and he builds this hotel, the Riviera, in Cuba. And it was inspired by Mo Dallas's 9-story Riviera casino on the Las Vegas Strip. And it was supposed to rival the luxury of any Las Vegas hotel of the era. It was built in Havana because Meyer Lansky did not want to be subject to U.S. laws or the scrutiny of the FBI. It came to be in 1956. So he said, all right, so that's what he did. It was built for only $8 million, most of which was provided by the Bank for Economic and Social Development, BANDES, a state-run development bank set up by then-President Fulgencio Batista. All right, now, I don't go through the list of those who invested with him. Dalitz, Morris Kleinman, Sam Tucker, Wilbur Clark at the Desert Inn, and Lansky's Hotel Nacional Casino, Ed Levinson of the Fremont Hotel, Charles Baby Barron looking after Sam Giancana's interests, and Hyman Abrams and Morris Rosen of the Flamingo Las Vegas of Bugsy Siegel fame. So the ownership by these wonderful gentlemen of the Riviera was then hidden behind layers of managers and frontmen. So what's the point of the story? The communist revolution comes along. Fidel Castro, as he takes control of Cuba, says initially, I'm not a communist. Everyone in America cheered. Turned out he was a liar, like all leftists. They all lie. That's part of the encoded religion of leftism, is to lie to anyone. They treat you like dhimmis, like a certain religion on the planet is taught to lie to you to get what they want. They consider anyone who is not one of them a dhimmi. So in this case, it was dummies thought that he wouldn't be a communist. All right. So then he becomes a communist, which he always was, and he seizes all the property, including American-owned properties, including Lansky's hotel, which wiped him out, other than what he salted away somewhere. So he lost the hotel. So he's quoted when he's retired in Miami walking a poodle, I believe. Nice little guy walking his poodle. And he's interviewed. I wish I could get my hands on that interview. I saw it once. We're walking the poodle. How are you? Very nice. Thank you very. No bodyguards, nothing. Amazing. Dressed neatly, dapper, fedora, dog. How are you? Fine. I don't know. How you doing? How nice. He had a great voice. I love this voice. So, what's the point of the story? Very simple. He's interviewed at some point, and he says, well, what happened? You lost your hotel. He says, yep. He said, a bigger gangster than me came along, and he had an army, not a gang, and took it from me. And he laughed, and he shrugged. He went on with his life. The point is, he knew that the communists basically were a group of gangsters. And instead of having just a gang, they had an army behind us. They took what they wanted. Sound familiar?
Sam. Warning. The Savage Nation contains adult language, adult content, psychological nudity. Listener discretion is advised. And now, America's most exciting radio talk show, The Savage Nation, home of borders, language, culture. And here he is, winner of the National Radio Hall of Fame Award, Michael Savage.
It's summertime and the living is supposed to be easy, and I've done my politics for the day. If you missed the first hour, you missed an awful lot, but I'm not going to repeat myself. The standard format in radio is repeat yourself for 3 straight hours with 1 point, and then sell a wig, sell a new wig. But I've done enough of that. So I'm going to do some nostalgia. This was a self-published book years ago, Savage Productions, Inc. How many you bought it, I don't even know. It's a great book called, what is this one called? Psychological Nudity, Savage Radio Stories. Done back in, first edition, first printing, 2008. Published in Las Vegas, Nevada by Savage Productions, ISBN number. Interesting book. So these are short one-page stories, and I want to entertain you today. So I'd like to read to you a story that I wrote a number of years ago from radio called The Nympho in Alley Pond Park from my book, Psychological Nudity, first published in 2008. It's only a one-pager. And I'm doing it to get our minds off the horrors of politics. How we've gone from Trump's war to Trump's door in only a few months is beyond belief. I think the door hit us in our behind on the way out because that's it. The dreamers now, 800,000 dreamers, letting Jeff Bezos take over Whole Foods. What's next? Jeff Bezos buys the White House with all possessions, including the politicians in it, and then puts a chip in them and tells them what to say. So we'll go to the 2 stories from that book. Page 55, The Nympho in Alley Pond Park, which is a very touching story about nymphomania, and then Love by the Sewer Plant, which is about young love. And I want to see how they sound years later, because I'm a jaded guy. These were written my first autopsy, then it goes to first dead body. How did I get to that? I'm looking for the love. What, they mislabeled? Oh, it's page 57. Page 55, rather. I thought it was just story 57. Page 55 here. Okay, The Nympho in Alley Pond Park. It's interesting it's Alley Pond Park because it's a funny story in its own way. I'm going to read it, okay? Cold. If I don't like it, I'll stop. See, I was about 16 years old from Queens, New York. One of the girls in the crowd, well, she was that way, an nymphomaniac. It was a cold winter's evening, and a group of 5 or 6 guys took her in a car to Alley Pond Park and had their way with her. I was one of the guys in the car, and I did not want my way with her. In fact, I felt bad for her. I didn't know what to do. I was the idiot, sensitive kid in the back who was laughed at. Hey, it's your turn. I said, no, I just don't want to do this. There's something wrong here. So after these guys, these pigs, these animals, most of whom wound up working in the garment center, selling clothing. Some, I think, went into the television business. One went into the record business. Got through with her. The car took her back to her house. And here's the whole crux of the story. It's not like I'm laughing about the nymphomaniac in the car. The car pulls up in front of her house. She lived in a nice house, and her father was waiting for her on the lawn of the house with an overcoat in his arms. The guys basically threw her, disheveled and half-naked, out of the car laughing. They sped away. I turned around and saw the father walking up to her to cloak her and cover her nakedness with the overcoat. Now, there's so much in this story that needs to be discussed. What? A father. What a great father he was. Now, you'd think a father would scream, "You filthy slut, you! How dare you!" Or he'd come at the car and hit the guys. He didn't do either, did he? He lived with what was. He knew who his daughter was and what her proclivities were. I don't know how she wound up. Maybe she turned out okay. A lot of people go through these phases and they, on the woman's side, can straighten out. I don't know what they become. Maybe yoga instructors later in life. Or if they're males and suffer from satyriasis, they become president like Bill Clinton. If they suffer the equivalent of nymphomania in a male, it's called satyriasis. And that can make you into a wonderful ACLU lawyer in some cases. In either case, that's the story of the nymphomaniac in Alley Pond Park. And now we're going to do Love by the Sewer Plant. Do you like this or not? You want me to go back again to this, politics? I'll get a knife and cut my wrist if I have to go back to Democrat, Republican. I listen to it. I think people, if they pass gas on there, I'd rather hear it. I can't take listening to it anymore. They're just phoning it in. They're lying to you. I'd rather listen to a clown passing gas in Coney Island than listen to this garbage. So I'm going to do what I'm going to do. News, views, and reviews. If you like it, you like it. I hope you do. You like it or not? Buddy has to know if you like this or not. That's the old Buddy Hackett joke. Remember, Buddy Hackett was in a hotel in the Catskill Mountains doing a shtick. They weren't laughing enough. So he came out on the stage and he said, "What's the matter? You don't like Buddy? You don't want Buddy to be up here? Buddy's going to leave. Buddy has to know whether you like him or not." Well, the audience started to cheer and scream, "No, Buddy, don't leave. Buddy, we love you." Well, Buddy went on with his great act. You don't know who I'm talking about, but he's just a comedian. Borscht Belt comedian, fabulous guy. You want me to do this or not? Otherwise, I'll go back to the other stuff. I don't want to go back. I won't go back. I'll do what I want. So I'll tell you the story, Love by the Sewer Plant, from an old volume of mine called Psychological Nudity. Not available, not selling it. You can't find it. If you have one, it's a collector's item. Long after Buddy is gone, you'll be able to sell it on eBay unless Amazon buys them up and Bezos burns them one night in a fireplace, all over the Savage books. Love by the Sewer Plant. Shall I tell you the story of Love by the Sewer Plant? Remember the song I Only Have Eyes for You, sung by the Flamingos? We're talking Route 42 in the Catskill Mountains. We're talking 1956-57. We're talking a sewer plant. We're talking about Love by the Sewer Plant. First Love by the Sewer Plant. Now, this girl was so beautiful that people stopped as she went by to marvel at her. We were all at a small hotel owned by a former boxer, a pugilist, a real tough guy. If he got into an argument with anyone who worked for him, like a waiter or a busboy, and they got smart, he just beat them up and threw them off the property. That type. Everyone was afraid of him, an old-school New York Jewish kind of street fighter type. So he ruled his little hotel with an iron fist. Because he was tough, things ran right. Nothing ever went wrong. No one robbed cutlery. No one talked back. So anyway, I'm a kid, 15 years old, and boom, it's Love by the Sewer Plant. We crossed the road to walk down to the Neversink River to make out. The water was so cold that when you walked across it, your feet turned blue. My uncle had a new Plymouth Fury, so I remember the time. This girl was so stunningly gorgeous, just really, really gorgeous. And the theater companies would come through. They had entertainment in these hotels and small theaters that they called casinos for a night of entertainment. Sometimes they'd have a comedian who was terrible, a juggler, or a balloon man doing cheap acts. In other words, schlocky entertainment. Nevertheless, they thought they were artists. You've got to understand that. Even though they were schlocky entertainers, let's say they could paint velvet paintings, they were still painters. In their minds, they were Van Goghs. They were theatrical, and everyone else was boring. In other words, they were the artists. They understood beauty. So one day, a group of these entertainers came around and just stared at this girl. They came running up to her as if I wasn't there. Here I am, a kid holding her hand and walking with her. We're just kids. One of them said, "Man, I wanted you to see this girl. This is the girl I was telling you about." They looked at her like she was a specimen of biblical beauty. Where are you going to go when you're a kid and you've got nowhere to go? So we took a walk down the hill. It was a long slope down to the river where there was a sewer treatment plant, which occasionally, as you well know, doesn't smell that good. Kids don't care, though. They can override anything, particularly when the lust hits them. So we two kids walked down the hill. I'm reading it, actually. It's as good as Twain. So we two kids are walking down the hill. We cross the river, roll up the dungarees, take off our shoes. Our legs turn blue, and we have a little moment of passion together. It was my first moment of passion, and not exactly on the level of a complete moment of passion. But for me, it was the first of that type. So now I'm starstruck. Coming back to my little cottage, the knees of my pants were soaking wet. The pants were soiled elsewhere, so I let my shirt tails out, calling, "Hi, Mom, what's to eat?" as I hurried my clothing into the wash basket. There were not enough stars in the sky that night, in the black sky, the billions of stars, to equal the passion that I had for the world. I thought I could literally reach out and grab a star and fly away. That's how phenomenal I felt that evening. But then, of course, as you well know, nothing like that lasts. So what I'm getting at with this story is that it was by a sewer plant and there's nothing more to it. Now imagine some music by John Coltrane, because there's no more to the story that I care to tell. If I tell any more, it will become a pantomime. And I don't want to embarrass myself with a pantomime of something that was quite beautiful. This story ends abruptly. Good jazz ends abruptly.
Join the Savage Nation. Call now, 855-400-SAVAGE, 855-400-7282. Savage.
The Savage Nation is sponsored by Swiss America, the only company I trust with my financial future. Call 800-289-2646 or SwissAmerica.com. You know, we are so distracted by the radical left with every issue under the sun, and we're losing sight of the bigger issues. Some of us really know how to prioritize issues and where our sanity lies and where our safety lies. That's what I've been trying to tell you. I'm an ardent conservationist. I help support groups that try to save the African elephant from poachers so that the pigs in China can get their ivory and show it off to their bourgeois friends. But there's another issue, for example. Remember I had the captain of the Sea Shepherd, or one of the heads of the Sea Shepherd operation on this show a couple of months ago. He was very popular to save the whales. Well, there's another animal called the vaquita porpoise that's near extinction in Mexico. You say, what do I care about a vaquita porpoise? I care about my transgender rights. Well, if that's what you do, then you're not a very good person. If you put your selfish needs ahead of that of an animal that's about to become extinct, what does that say about you? That's number one. So this group, the Sea Shepherd, has ships, and they spent the last 6 months patrolling the vaquita refuge in the upper Gulf of Mexico, near California, retrieving illegal gill nets that trap and kill the vaquita and totoba, along with other marine wildlife. So these ships really did something. They didn't just talk. They didn't march. They didn't parade. They didn't scream hatred. They removed 233 illegal fishing net gear along the area, and they saved a lot of animals. But listen carefully. In February, scientists announced that only about 30 vaquita porpoises remained in their habitat. 30 in the whole world. And this is half the number of animals that were previously recorded in 2015, which makes the vaquita porpoise the most endangered marine mammal in the world. And you say, well, I don't really care about vaquita. It means nothing to me. Well, there's more to the story than meets the eye. During Operation Milagro 3, Sea Shepherd discovered 5 dead porpoises, and their deaths are attributed to being caught in gill nets set up by poachers to trap the totoba bass. It's a fish whose swim bladder is prized for unsubstantiated medicinal claims in China and Hong Kong, where it sells for tens of thousands of dollars. And once the poor vaquita porpoise becomes entangled in these gill nets, they're unable to go back to the surface of the water to breathe, and they drown to death. Now, during this campaign by Sea Shepherd, the crew removed 1,195 dead animals, sharks, dolphins, whales, turtles, and sea lions, and they released 795 live ones. Do you understand what we should be focused on in this world? Not the selfish needs of human beings in every case. No, but sometimes the survival needs of mere animals who have no voice. And I'm giving them a voice today on the Savage Nation. So now you know there are some groups who are doing good, like Sea Shepherd. They're a real group as opposed to the fake Sierra Club. The Sierra Club is a totally political organization that does nothing for humanity and very, very little for the environment. In my estimation, the Sierra Club is very much like the United Nations. It's money for bureaucrats and nothing else. They do nothing to save the wildlife of the world or to actually preserve the environment in any way. All they do is talk about it and go to conferences. Sea Shepherd's Operation Milagro to save the vaquita porpoise concludes a 6-month campaign in Mexico. This animal is now almost extinct. The vaquita porpoise, maybe you heard it first on the Savage Nation. So what's the bigger picture? Why should you care about an endangered species? What does it matter to you? Now, of course, I'm not addressing this to socialists. They hate the environment. They only use the environmental issue to peddle socialism. But go look at how the environment looks in socialist countries, and you'll understand why we have the most pure environment in the world here in a capitalist country, because we have the most important environmental protections of any place on earth. Now let's go to the next step. If the vaquita porpoise should disappear from the earth, would that affect your life? Not directly, but it would affect your life because you are the vaquita porpoise. When the eagles started to die in America because DDT was destroying the shell of their egg, making the egg too weak to hatch a chickling of an eagle, there was a great outcry, and America did something. We stepped in and we stopped the use of DDT in sensitive habitats, and the eagle came back. Why does that matter to you? Because we are the eagle. Each one of us is the eagle. And what I mean by that is this. In the biggest scheme of the ecological picture, try to remember the food chain and the ecological picture. If the eagle dies off from poisons in the environment, it means you are getting poisoned by the environment as well. And so therefore you are the eagle. If the vaquita porpoise is being trapped in a gill net and then dies of drowning because it can't come to the surface, this poor animal, to breathe, you're being drowned to death. Because you will be drowned to death unless you stop the forces of evil that are killing that animal. And those forces of evil in this case happen to be the bourgeois pigs in China who prize the bladder of the associated fish that is being trapped along with the vaquita. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? This is why I say the UN, I have nothing but contempt for it. The UN does nothing to save the African elephant, nothing to save whales, nothing to save the vaquita porpoise. The UN is filled with useless bureaucrats. Close it down. Close it down. Close it down. Donald Trump, close down the United Nations. But getting back to the issues at hand, the main issue at hand is that our agenda is not dead, not weak, not over. It's just started. Our agenda of borders, language, and culture, and most particularly as articulated in Trump's war, it's more alive now and more important now than ever for three reasons. One, because we have a mandate from the election yesterday in Georgia. Number two, it's to remind Trump what his election was all about. We are the forgotten men and women of America, but we haven't forgotten why we voted for this unknown businessman, unknown in politics, that is. Okay, Trump's economic war, Trump's war to repeal Obamacare, Trump's war for our borders, Donald, attention, Trump's culture wars. He's not fought 1 inch on the culture wars. Trump's war to restore the military. To his credit, he has sent them a lot of money. But has he done what I asked him to do on page 118, restoring the purged officers? Has he done what I said on page 122, treat our battle injured, not sexually confused? Has he done what I say on page 125, restore qualifications, standards in the military? How about Trump's war against the war machine? I thought he was a man of peace. Why are we suddenly so bellicose around the world? Why is he listening to the liberal warmongers, who I wrote about on page 140? Why is he listening to the neocon warmongers, page 145? Why is he listening to the war profiteers, who I write about on page 151? What is our battle plan, page 153? Those are some of the ideas that I haven't forgotten about. This is our architectural plan. Trump's war is more important than ever.
Savage.
Well, here in California, mainly San Francisco, the crime wave continues. Yep, the crime wave continues. A man robbed in Berkeley on Grizzly Peak, second such incident in that location. The criminals are out of control because the police have been hamstrung by the wonderful, wonderful leaders in the backyard of Nancy Pelosi. They are empowered to attack with impunity because they know that the crimes will not be followed up because the police are intimidated. This is a direct result of 8 years of attacks on police by Obama and Eric Holder. Can you believe that? That's why I'm telling you I got to turn away from it. So for your listening pleasure, I am going to read you some childhood stories from my book, Psychological Nudity, published in 2008. And it's not to sell you a book. They're out of print. I'm just to bring you up to speed. How about story number 1, the electric blue saddle. Wait, let me read the exact title. The electric blue saddle-stitched pants. Do you know that any one of the titles of my book would make for a movie? The Fly and the Tuna. Tough high school geometry teacher. All right, that wouldn't be a title. Happy and Sad Cufflinks. Woodchuck Bill. These are repertoire. This is my repertoire. Let me read you that one. Not Woodchuck Bill. I'm bored of that. Happy and Sad Cufflinks. I think that's me today anyway. I read years ago when I got nervous when I read Freud when I was 15. When he wrote that our personalities are formed by the time we're 5, I said, I'm cursed. I'm going to be like this forever? It's like an eternity. I'm never going to change. No, you never change. You're never going to. So Happy and Sad Cufflinks. So I write this. No question, if I was a kid in school today, let's say in the 6th grade, they'd put me on every mind-controlling drug imaginable. The mean-faced, clipped-haired women would say, that little savage, he has shining eyes, and he talks too much. Put him on Ritalin. Put him on Prozac. Put him on Adderall. Put him in a straitjacket. He shows all the classic signs of being a boy. We must kill it, kill it, kill it, crush it. I believe most mothers don't even know what their poor boys go through in school. When I was a young boy, my mother bought me a pair of cufflinks. They were a set of the thespian masks. You know, one was a sad face and one was a happy face. I loved those cufflinks. I'd look at them when I was bored in class. On my right cuff, I had the happy face. On the left cuff, I had the sad face. Some days, I'd switch them around and put the happy face, the happy face on the left sleeve and the sad face on the right sleeve. I'm sorry, I'm enjoying it. See, I knew I could cheer myself up. Many days, I was so bored I didn't know what to do. I'd look at these cufflinks for hours in the classroom while the teacher was going on and on about George Washington and the river. I was so bored I spaced out. I learned that George crossed the river. He saved the country in Trenton. He overthrew the British. I got that the first week of kindergarten. They're still teaching it to me in the 4th grade. In the 5th grade, I learned what a peninsula was. In the 6th grade, it took them a year to teach me what an island was. I couldn't take it. So I stared at the cufflinks, the happy face, the sad face, the sad face, the happy face. Then I got bored with the cufflinks. I started pulling hair out of the skin of my arms. Today, they would have put me on Ritalin or put me in a nut house. They'd call my lack of attention a disease. It was called boredom. I inflicted pain on myself rather than listen to the teacher bore me one more second. Rather than improve the curriculum, teachers today might say, oh, your son has something wrong with him, Mrs. Savage. We found out that he looks at cufflinks instead of listening to the teacher talk about how evil America is and why white males need to be put in the pillory. He's pulling hair out of his arm, and we suggest you put him on a moderate dose, just a moderate dose of Ritalin on the first day. That's for starters. Soon the teacher might say, let's put him on, whatever the drug of choice is. Now, I'd be the first to admit that teaching is a tough profession. Keeping the lesson engaging day after day takes everything out of you. As long as I live, I'll never forget the day I first walked into a classroom as a young teacher. Maybe I'll write a book about it one day. You know, something for the students. I'd call it The Savage Guide to Surviving Junior High School. Anyway, back then, I didn't look much older than the students. I had graduated high school at 16, which means I, in turn, graduated college very young. Frankly, I decided to grow a goatee to look older than the junior high school kids in my class. I remember when I raised my foot to walk over the curb the very first day I was going to teach, to step into that junior high school, and my foot froze up. I actually stopped mid-stride. My foot froze before it touched the step. Well, anyway, the students were racing past me to get to class, and I was standing there as stiff as a statue. I had no idea I had a fear of teaching, but I did. If you think teaching is an easy job, try it someday. It is probably one of the toughest jobs on earth if you do it right. So when I'm critical about the teaching profession and the teachers' union, don't get me wrong, I fully recognize it's a tough drill. At the same time, there's no excuse for boring students to death. If an uneducated man like Woodchuck Bill could teach me about life, then surely I should be able to do the same with my college degree. At least that was my view. See, they were short and sweet. They were well written. They were actually classical stories in some. One-Armed Frank is a good one. Did I ever tell you about One-Armed Frank? My father knew a guy with one arm. I don't know how the guy became one arm, but you know, you didn't know a lot of people with one arm in those days. Even today, I guess you don't know one-armed people because they have fake arms. He had the arms sewn up in a suit. Nobody hid reality in those days. Today, it's like, oh, yeah, he's normal. He's just like us. In those days, it was One-Armed Frank. Today it's like, oh, he's better than all. Man, he's special. Like if you have one arm, you're better than a guy with two arms today. You know what I mean? If you have no arms and no legs, you're Superman in the politically correct world. Now, I'm not trying to degrade people who lost their arms and legs in war or an accident. I'm making a broader point. In those days, if you were missing an arm, that's what you were named. Whatever your anomaly was, that was your name. It made it easier for the average person to remember everybody. It was sort of a Damon Runyon play. So, one-armed Frank was a very sweet guy, but he had sick breath. Now, I want to tell you there are bad breaths, and then there are very bad breaths. Then there are medicinal breaths. This one had to be solved with a medicine that hasn't been invented yet. I remember one winter my old man was dropping Frank off at his home. Frank was in the passenger seat, and I sat in the back seat. It was minus 4 degrees out in New York, but we had to ride all the way from Manhattan out to Brooklyn with the windows open. Did you ever meet a person like this? Whenever he spoke, the car filled with a nauseous fume. Are we going past the Trun's meat factory, I asked. No, we're not in Williamsburg. Did we run over a small furry creature that got caught in the muffler and the smell shot up through the floorboards? No. Did I step on something? You look at your shoes. No, it's Frank talking. Killing mice in the laboratory. That's a great story. Many of you don't know I left science and went to another field because I wouldn't kill mice anymore. I should tell you that story, but maybe you're bored already and want me to go back to Democrats and Republicans. Why them Dems? I got to tell you, if those Dems only did... Why, they're horrible. It's them Repubs that are no good, but I hate them and love them, and therefore I'm on the radio telling you about them. It's Dems, Republicans, Republicans, Dems, Dems, Republican. No, can't do it, no, can do. Oh, I got the death of pets in here. When was this written? Hold it. I'm going to do one more. This is a great, great poem that I wrote way back in my archives. It was written August 1985, written in a lightning storm at 40,000 feet over Cheyenne, Wyoming, when I thought the plane was going to crash. I had another drink, and I wrote when pasta was spaghetti. So you liberals get ready to sneer, and you sane people get ready to enjoy it because it's a wonderful poem. The hairy forearms of New York serve you your coffee with a turning gesture, an offering that says, drink, eat, enjoy. The wiry Italian in Vincent's Clam Bar, the one behind the greased-over register. The young kid connected, the one who receives his deference from the spaghetti cook, older than his gangster father. The spaghetti cook who looks like an old-fashioned doctor from the Bronx with clipped mustache. He actually pulls some long noodles out of the pot and eats them as they cook, looking to the grimy ceiling for his tender answer. Well, I used to call it spaghetti. Now it's pasta at $20 a plate. The smoky windows of Romeo's Spaghetti now offer radios and knickknacks. It was only 50 cents a plate then. In neon letters that you couldn't miss even through a fogged-over window on a cold winter's eve, there was life. Marinara sauce that stuck to the seat? No, that's wrong. Marinara sauce that tasted of the sea. Noodles as long as your young arm. Meatballs as fluffy as your dreams of them. Bread on the table that you'd eat against your parents' admonition that would, the meal is coming, don't eat the bread. And men, some burly, with black hairy forearms, whose smiles scared you, and little skinny guys with the look of murder on their faces, and people who slurped their spaghetti straight to their mouths from the plate, one motion like Chinese shoveling rice at mouth with clicking sticks. That was gusto before it became a beer ad. That was taste before it became a synonym for fashion. That was spaghetti before it became pasta. You know, something occurred I must tell you about in this intimate program of mine called The Savage Nation. Where was it? I was in the mall somewhere, some white bread mall, which I enjoy going to. I like looking at clothing and mannequins, living and dead. And something occurred that was so tragicomic and touching that I said I have to tell the people in the audience about it. There was an elderly couple. I don't know what age bracket. It looked like 80s. And don't laugh at the following story. It was a couple, a man and a woman and another woman. Her wig fell off right in the floor. It hit the ground outside. And I looked over. I did a double take. She was bald. The man bent over and picked it up and gently put it on her head and brushed it down and put it in place and held her shoulders. And the three of them walked away, and I almost cried looking at that. I said, that's one of the most beautiful things I ever saw in my life. That is such an act of kindness and compassion and love. None of the vermin in Hollywood could produce that. You're telling me the drug addicts on HBO wouldn't mock that? You're telling me all the wise guys who think that they're funny wouldn't make a mockery of that? Well, I can't. Did you see the beauty in that story? I did. I don't know who they were, and I would assume the woman's dying of cancer. She's on chemo. She lost her hair, and they took her out maybe for one last time, and the way I would see that story, the last days of her life, and it was her best friend and the husband, and that was it. It just bang like that. You know, I'm sitting with the dogs. Like, so you say, what can you see in life? Life is boring. No, not if you have an open mind and an open heart. If you have open eyes, open mind, open heart, the world is full everywhere. I could be alone and see a million things at once. I could stand next to the water and see a million things changing a second on a bay, because nothing is static unless you're static inside. So you could go to a white bread mall and see nothing and say, oh, it's boring. I shouldn't be here. I should be on vacation somewhere where it's exciting. But you'd go to that exciting place and be bored because you wouldn't see anything. But also, if you look around, you can see humanity everywhere. And, you know, as a wiser man than I once wrote, life is with people. I don't practice enough of that myself because this business is very isolating. Working alone as I do, and primarily in home studios. I'm invited to broadcast from KSFO. Somehow I don't get around there often enough. And when I do, I really love it. I love seeing the people there and talking with them and interchanging. But when you do a show like this, which is so intimate from a home studio, you're speaking on one hand from the heart to millions of people. And on the other hand, you don't know whether they're receiving it or not because there's no audience. So I hope you're understanding where I'm coming from or where I'm going. And if you want to call the show on Rock and Roll Friday, you can do so at 855-407-282. I now get my excellent staff, my board operator, Robert Borowski, to play another song. Come go with me. It's okay. It's a little... All right, play it. Whatever. Play Lovey Dovey. Baby, on the sea, I need you, darling. So come go with me. The tragic comedy of Mike the Savage. Tragic comedy in every sentence. You can hear both the comedy and the tragedy. You can hear it in the tone of my voice. The utter, I wouldn't want to use the word, the wrong word here. It's not an undertone of sadness. It's an undertone of understanding of humanity and how hard it really is for all of us, in plain English. The undertone of understanding. It's like a Sajat Ray movie, for those of you who remember them. That whole story about life in India in those days. That whole that whole sweep of life, of birth, life, death, in an intense city with thousands of people living in any neighborhood, everywhere, jam. So in 1 minute, you'd see a baby playing in the street, and then a person being taken out and dying. You see people living in the gutter and people riding by in a Rolls Royce. That's what I project, I think, in my almost every statement. When I get off the politics and get into the stories and get into my humanity, that's where it comes from. I have not a tragic-comic sense of reality. I wouldn't even say that it's tragic. It's more of and I'm not a Buddhist, don't get me wrong, but the Buddhist sensibility is a beautiful view of life, which is that we're all on a wheel of suffering. I don't want to go there. You don't want to hear it. Many of you want to walk around like false optimism about how great everything is to get through the day, or you cut your throat altogether. I don't want to lead you there. I'm not trying to get you depressed. But I'm saying it is a suffering. That's what life is. No matter what the medical establishment promises you, it's a false promise. If you're unhappy, if you're sad, well, get used to it because that's life. Life is fundamentally what the Buddhists say it is. We're born to suffer. And all of life is suffering. And then occasionally we have these moments of joy, moments of happiness, moments of escape. Some of us have to get there through various means, and I'm one of them, whether it be running or swimming or having a drink, whatever. But what I'm saying is fundamentally underneath it all, that's it. That's the story. And no one knows why. I'll be right back.
Savage.
The Savage Nation is sponsored by Swiss America, the only company I trust with my financial future. Call 800-289-2646 or SwissAmerica.com. I've yet to tell you about the first fruit of the season. It's biblical to me. I have a small property somewhere north of San Francisco that I have an orchard on. And when I bought it in '02, it had a peach orchard on it, an apricot orchard, and eventually it died off for whatever the reason, some disease. I put in a new orchard. It's not a lot of trees. It's maybe, a total of 15, 20. I don't know how many trees are up there, but I take such pride and care in these trees. Well, I planted them a couple of years ago. They were just baby saplings, when they would buy them from a nursery. Well, my gardener came down to this other place that I broadcast from, and he said, Michael, here are the first peaches that we picked for you. Little peaches, delicious. I ate a few. Now, is that a story to tell you? Yeah, well, why isn't it a story to tell you? Because nature goes on no matter who is in the presidency, no matter what garbage you see on television. Nature is eternal. It keeps renewing itself. That's why we love our pets. Do you understand that? That's why we love our orchards. That's why we love our connection to nature. That is why you go camping. That is why you go skiing. Well, I love my little peach orchard. I got the first fruits. Look up first fruits in the Bible. You'll see that they're there. KSFO, Mike on Buddhism. I want to hear this call.
Yes, sir. I respect the Buddhist perspective. I understand the desire to remove oneself from the karmic wheel, but it has always struck me in a sense as being a dichotomy in that the other side of that coin is an avoidance of the human experience.
All religions are somewhat specific to the nation and the people at the time. Buddhism was a religion that was very good for people who were serfs and had absolutely no chance to advance themselves in their society, because no matter what you do, you're going to struggle and fail. So Buddhism was ultimately a religion for submission to the inevitable of getting nowhere in life.
Savage. Warning: The Savage Nation contains adult language, adult content, psychological nudity. Listener discretion is advised. And now, America's most exciting radio talk show, The Savage Nation, home of borders, language, culture. And here he is, winner of the National Radio Hall of Fame Award, Michael Savage.
I want to play for you something we created specifically for the show for you in the Savage Nation. We're going to start with the Democrat leaders who are running on fake news for months now. What do you say should be done to Maxine Waters, Charles Schumer, Bernie the Commie Sanders, Nancy the Bumbler Pelosi, and the fake Indian, Pocahontas Warren, who kept talking about Trump and Russia, even though it was fake news from the beginning and they knew it? Here is 03.
I just wonder what the Russians have politically, personally, or financially on President Trump, because why would the President of the United States put Putin on a pedestal? There's something wrong with this picture.
Do they have something on him, which is veering him toward a pro-Russian foreign policy at the expense of American interest?
There is real concern that administration, transition, and campaign officials may try to cover up ties to Russia by deleting emails, texts, and other records that could shine a light on those connections.
Did they and his people collude with the Russians
Fannie
when they
Mae,
undermined our democracy?
What
corruption,
do
Fannie
the Russians
Mae.
have on Mr. Trump?
Seltzer
what
man.
we do know, I believe
Seltzer
we know
man.
is true, is
Lying
that
seltzer man.
Trump needed financial
apron.
help for some of
Filthy
his business
apron,
efforts.
lying seltzer man.
And it appears that they
Wife
got some help
wife
from the Russian
investigated for
oligarchs,
a
the
scandal with
billionaires in
college.
Russia.
There's
Lying,
nobody left
fake
in
socialist
America
liar.
who believes that Donald Trump fired James Comey in order to try, because James Comey was mean to Hillary Clinton.
You know, I've said all along that he would lead us.
I can't. That's enough. That's enough already. Enough already. You get the leadership you deserve. You keep electing Dianne Feinstein, you idiots. You think she's okay? Let me stop right there. We have more information for you than is necessary to indict these people, if not in a court of law, but in a court of public opinion. Now, we gave you the Democrat leaders running with the big lie put forward by, I believe the Hillary Clinton campaign started it. John Podesta invented it. Hillary ran with it during the campaign, and then CNN created a story around a fake story. They got caught with the Project Veritas tape. Here is the people from Project Veritas. These are the real journalists. These are the real Pulitzer Prize winners. Actually, forget the Pulitzer Prize. That's a fake prize to begin. You talk about fake news. The Pulitzer Prize is a fake prize. It means nothing. Did you ever look into the history of Pulitzer, who he was in competition with Hearst, and they put out one fake news headline after another? Did you know that? Pulitzer is synonymous with fake news. So when you say the Pulitzer Prize, it actually is appropriate. They should all get a Pulitzer Prize. But here is Project Veritas and their video of CNN producer John Bonifield, who I think was fired, caught on hidden camera admitting there's no proof to CNN's Russia narrative. Let's have the short version.
Then why is CNN constantly like Russia this, Russia that?
Because it's ratings.
Because it's ratings?
Our ratings are incredible right now.
But honestly, you think the whole Russia shit is just like bullshit?
Could be bullshit. I mean, it's mostly bullshit right now. Like, we don't have any big giant proof. I just feel like they don't really have it, but they want to keep digging.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think the president is probably right to say, like, look, you are witch hunting me. Like, you have no smoking gun. You have no real proof.
And the CEO of CNN said in our internal meeting, he said, good job, everybody, covering the climate accords. But we're done with it. Let's get back to Russia.
Let's get back to Russia. He Zucker punched America. Zucker punched America. What is this with the Zuckers? You know Facebook needs to be broken up under RICO statutes, if not under antitrust statutes. You know that they're all too big. But what about the collusion in the media? You talk about collusion with Russia, which is fake. How about collusion between the networks to get Donald Trump and to get Republicans, and for that matter, to get anybody who's conservative? There's collusion there in the newsrooms. You think there's no collusion on that side? This is when a government steps in. When a media is so out of control and is so full of it and makes things up, that's the place for the Federal Communications Commission. When I say the government, there is actually a commission in place to investigate Jeff Zucker of CNN. Oh, big deal. He fired 3 reporters. That's like a mafia don, in my opinion, getting snared up in a crime and then firing 3 of his underlings while the guy continues to enjoy his life. Sorry, you go for the head guy. You don't go for the people he told to do it, okay? What you are seeing here is a coup. You're watching the Zuckers of the world trying to take over this country as if they have not done enough harm already. Downplaying radical Islam and inventing stories about Donald Trump that are false is putting all of us in a clear and present danger. And I want heads to roll. I want Zucker to be called before a Senate panel. I want the damn Senate to do their real job, and I want them to bust the newspaper trusts. Look, it's a huge headline. We've been Zucker punched in America. If you take a look at the man's face and his physique, and you take a look at the face, you're reminded of Orson Welles' movie, A Touch of Evil. We all know the media is fake. We've all known that from the beginning. I mean, for you to have expected the media to give you the truth of the Bible is ludicrous on your part. I had a friend, I don't know him, I haven't seen him in 40 years. The only one I know who ever went into the media. He just let's leave it at that. He went into the media, couldn't do anything else. He couldn't even become a dentist or a chiropractor or a podiatrist or foot doctor, nothing. So it wasn't doctor, dentist. It wasn't like lawyer, doctor, lawyer, dentist. He became a journalist because he couldn't do anything else. He began working like the graveyard shift at a newspaper somewhere, and he used to do like funerals or whatever, but he told me all the stories were made up. He said when they needed to fill space, his editor would say, just make up a story about something or someone. You know, man kills dog, dog kills man, man bites dog. So for you to have expected the newspapers to be telling the truth is really more about us than it is about them. When did you ever expect Andy Blooper, a phony through and through, an empty suit if there ever was one, who was picked only because he's allegedly good-looking, or Wolfie Blitzkrieg, who's been around longer than Mount Rushmore, or Jake Woodpecker, another faker they dug up from somewhere and made him into a reporter, or Don Lemonade, another one. If you were buying light bulbs in a store, and there's like I think the lowest wattage in a store now in a bulb, I know there's a 60. Then there's a 3-way. What's lower than a 60? They make a 10. Okay, Don Lemonade on CNN is the refrigerator bulb of bulbs. like about 5 watts to make sure it doesn't raise the temperature inside the refrigerator. I mean, you look at Don Lemon, what do you see? You see a refrigerator bulb inside the brain. Did you ever expect this man to give you veritas or truth? All right, so they got caught on tape, and 3 of them were forced to resign after the Russia story retraction. Boy, are we vindicated today. How many years have we been telling you, and I collectively say we in the imperial sense of we, I could take credit for it, but we're all in the same exact state here of euphoria to see what happened and be vindicated after all these years that the evil men and women at CNN, who should be in prison, by the way. You know, when a surgeon cuts an artery or cuts a nerve by mistake, they lose their medical license. They can't be a surgeon again. Usually they just pull their license. But when you see that CNN was caught on tape by the great Project Veritas, we have the video and the sound, and they say on tape, not knowing that they were being secretly recorded, about the Russia collusion. I mean, it's mostly BS right now, says the major producer, like we don't have any giant proof. He then says, and you're going to hear all of this yourself, it's a business. People are like, the media has an ethical, all the nice cutesy little ethics that used to get talked about in journalism school. He said, you're just like, that's adorable, but this is a business. And according to the CNN producer, which you will hear, business is booming. Trump is good for business right now, he concluded. He then goes on to explain that the most evil man in the world, in my opinion, is none other than the pig, Jeff Zucker. The pig, Jeff Zucker, who I'm not supposed to speak about in such derogatory terms because I think pig is too complimentary to explain a man that's lower than, let us say, Goebbels. Jeff Zucker, if he could have, during the Holocaust, I think now, would have happily worked for Goebbels because the ratings would have been good. If you think I'm angry, you're wrong. I want vengeance. I want the government to step in, and I want someone's head to roll. I know they fired 3 producers over the fake report about the Russia investigation. I've been telling you for months that there's nothing there because common sense indicated had there been something there, there would have been more than smoke. There was not even smoke. It was invented smoke by the media. What does that say to you about not only Jeff Zucker, the pig who runs CNN? What does it say to you about Andy Blooper, the fake reporter, who they had to give a fake pair of glasses to make him look like he had an IQ higher than 95? What does it say to you about the gray-haired elder of CNN, Wolfie Blitzkrieg? I mean, what do you think about Wolfie Blitzkrieg today? What do you think, he knows nothing about this? And what about Jake Woodpecker or Jim Acosta? Allegedly his name is Acosta, but I change it to Acosta because he accosts people every time he speaks. Or that fool Don Lemonade. They're a clown act. So you say, well, all right, you don't have to watch them. No, I'm sorry. When people are taking their statements for truth, and then they're running with truth and they're bringing down people and destroying lives, that is no longer a mistake. That's a guaranteed crime. And I'd like to know why and how they're still in business. Then there's this clown, another one in the clown show. I shouldn't even mention his name because he was always a lightweight. He was never anybody. There's never Trump, a John Podhoretz. His mother, I think, writes a blog. He actually pretended to be a conservative for many of you for years. John Podhoretz actually defended CNN after this and said it's unfair to yell fake news at them. Could you believe this, John Podhoretz? So this is what's going on. I believe there's a solution to this. And I believe that Paul Watson of InfoWars is right when he says that President Donald Trump must now revoke CNN's White House press credentials. They must not be allowed into the press room. They don't deserve it. They shouldn't be there. They're fake news. Trump is vindicated. There is no Russia collusion. It's sickening. I'll be right back.
Savage.
The Savage Nation is sponsored by Swiss America, the only company I trust with my financial future. Call 800-289-2646 or SwissAmerica.com. The European Union slapped Google with a record $2.7 billion fine for manipulating their search engines. They're going after them for an antitrust action. How many years have I, alone on this show, I alone have been screaming antitrust, 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 antitrust. I've been telling you Google should be hit with an antitrust action in America. Why, by the way, here's the interesting question. Why is Trump so soft on Google? Why is Trump not going after the owner of the Washington Toast, what his name is? I don't remember. Bezos. Started with the sales site Amazon, that he bought the Washington Post and turned it into an anti-Trump screed. Why is that company, Amazon, not being broken up under antitrust? The question is, why is it the European Union that's going after Google? This is a major league story. Maybe it'll cause Trump to do something on this side of the Atlantic. It's a huge story. $2.7 billion fine caps a 7-year antitrust probe. Did you hear what I'm saying? A 7-year antitrust probe. And the European Union says that the new rules that they put in place will allow rivals of Google to get damages. This is what we need in America. I've told you there's no possibility for competitors to emerge when you have giants like Google or Facebook, right? Or Amazon. If you're suing Google, EU enforcers have just saved you a lot of legwork. Dozens and dozens of companies have brought lawsuits against Google. Eric Schmidt. What about Apple? Jim Crook was just in the White House last week. Jim Crook went to the White House with the other Silicon giants, right? The Silicon Pirates all went to the White House. What do you think they went there for? They knew that Trump was threatening them with antitrust actions against all of them. They knew that. He said it from the beginning. But he's gone soft on them. So what do you think they said to him? They said, we'll go easy on you if you don't go after us on antitrust. They did a deal. They did horse trading. That's my guesstimate. I don't know. I wasn't there. But my guess is that you're not going to see as harsh stories coming out of the Washington Post against Trump since that meeting. You're not going to see that much anti-Trump stuff from any of the other tech gonifs after that meeting. But in Europe, they're going after them. For dozens of companies that have brought lawsuits that claim Google was crushing them by its dominance in Internet searches, this announcement today will show that this monster, Google, improperly built up its business at their expense. This is something you doctrinaire, knee-jerk conservatives don't understand. Many of you are doctrinaire, knee-jerk conservatives because you listen to idiots in the media who don't know the first thing about free market enterprise. All they do is repeat the doxies, the knee-jerk right-wingism, that if it's big, it's good. There should be no antitrust action. There should be no tariffs on China. They still think Ronald Reagan is alive. All right, so there's two main stories. You're just enjoying the victory, as it were, that we on the right side have been exonerated. Donald Trump has been exonerated, and all of his complaints about fake news have been shown to be true. And yet, you're not going to read about it in your local rag because they're all owned by conglomerates or corporate conglomerates, if you want to put it more specifically, who are all super to the left, publishing only false news whenever it comes to anything to do with America and our borders, language, and culture. Fake news, false news, propaganda around the clock. And the average jerk consumes this garbage. You go to an airport, what do you see? When you go to an airport, there are televisions blaring. Inevitably, it's Andy Blooper, Wolfie Blitzkrieg, Jake Woodpecker, Don Lemonade, giving you lies. It's as though we are living in the old Soviet Union where there was either Izvestia or Pravda, only two outlets with the government news, so to speak. That's called propaganda. It's not called journalism. They never were journalists. They have debased the word journalist. There was a time when journalists were, I don't know, they had some standards of some kind. It's all business, so they can make stuff up. So you're saying, well, why are you going on about it? Why? Because they almost destroyed a presidency and they almost destroyed my revolution.
Savage.
We are talking about the biggest problem in America. which is the bums in the streets of San Francisco, New York. Name your city. I don't care what city you are in. Nobody will talk about the problem because of the laxness of liberalism, the proliferation of drug-addicted criminals in the homeless population is leading to a meltdown of the society that we all live in. Now, if you think this is happening by chance, you're mistaken. Do you know how much money is being made by middle women and middle men on the bum problem? You have any idea what kind of money the so-called homeless departments make? Well, let's take one city, for example. Here in San Francisco, one of the most dysfunctional cities in the world, a third world city posing as a first world city, with a Queen Anne front and a Mary Ann behind, we know that they spend at least $305 million in direct costs for bums. But what do they spend in indirect costs on the bums in the streets? What do I mean by indirect costs? Well, that would be police, that would be firemen, that would be EMTs, that would be legal services. How much does that cost us? Don't know. What about Berkeley, California? Berkeley, California, the little city filled with anarchists who put on masks and then teach at Berkeley by day. The city spends $17.7 million in federal, state, and local funds on an array of programs and services for bums. That works out to about $18,000 per homeless bum. $18,000 per homeless bum. And how much do the managers of these homeless services divisions make? Do you know what their salaries are? I do. Your hair will stand up when you find out all of these sanctimonious, fraudulent liberals who go to their committee meetings like they care about the bums. They don't care about the bums. It's a business to them. And what about the drugs and the alcohol that's sold to the bums? Where does that money go? Where do the welfare checks go? Probably to the drug dealers and the liquor stores, right? So you see, it's a big business to keep an entire underclass of bums living on freeways. If you drive from the Oakland airport along the corridor, the 80 corridor, over to Pinole or up in that area, you'll see an encampment of homeless bums off the highway that'll make you won't know what city you're living in. You'll say this can't be so. From Oakland to Berkeley, you can count one encampment after another living on the freeways. Now, I want to ask you something. Do you think that there are no health-related risks to the overall population, such as lice, such as typhus, such as hepatitis? Do you have any idea? Where are they defecating? Where are they urinating? Now I read this story. San Francisco to pay undocumented immigrant, that's an illegal alien bum, $190,000. Do you know why? Do you know why the city is paying $190,000 of the taxpayers' money? He claimed he was reported to federal immigration authorities in violation of the city's sanctuary city ordinance. Now, I would take the lawyers for this illegal alien. I would deport the lawyers as enemies of the state. But, of course, I'm just dreaming. See, I live in California where dreams are permitted. I'm dreaming for clean streets. I'm dreaming for streets that are safe. Do you know that there are districts in San Francisco, and I'll name a few, probably in New York as well, which has the highest homeless population in America, and we're going to talk about that. I have a list of the top 10 homeless cities in America with the highest populations. But I don't want to call them homeless. That implies they're entitled to a home. I don't know that a home is encoded in the Constitution, is it? Where's it written that you're entitled to a home? I mean, when I was young, I wanted to live in the West Village of New York. I wanted a brick-lined apartment. Just a studio, mind you, with a little garden. But I couldn't afford the $135 a month for that apartment. God knows what it costs today. So I had to live in Queens, in a neighborhood I didn't care for. And I had to go in a rotten subway to get into Manhattan to my job. That's the way it is. Then when you have a family, you can't afford to live in New York or Queens, so you move to Nassau or Suffolk, if you can afford to live there. That's how the suburbs develop. But if you tell that to the moronic millennials who think they're entitled to a penthouse on Fifth Avenue, they tell you that you're not being fair, that they're entitled to live in Manhattan because that's where they want to live. And if they want to live there, they should have a right to live there. And if they want health care, they have a right to health care. That's crazy. No, there's no right to anything on this earth. The right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is all you're promised. The rest is up to you. Now, I have had enough of the bums. There are people living in the Mission District in San Francisco and other districts, the Castro. They cannot come out of their houses. They're assaulted by bums. Bums are encamped on their doorstep. They're defecating on their doorstep, stealing their mail, threatening the owners. People ride this underground subway system here called BART. They get out on the 16th Street subway stop, I'm reading, and they're assaulted by a homeless army of violent felons who harass them, exhibit themselves, defecate, urinate. The people have created watch groups, 50, 60 people, liberals, all good liberals, bleeding heart liberals. They can't live in their own houses. They thought that by moving in there and cleaning up their house, the neighborhood would clean up, but it didn't. And the supervisors come over. The supervisors come over and do nothing. This is what liberalism does to a city. It destroys it. Top 10 cities with the most homeless population, as you well know. New York, number 1. Over 70,000 bums in the streets. Los Angeles, 43,000. Seattle, 10,000. San Diego, 8,600. D.C., 8,300. These are known statistics. San Francisco, total homeless, about 7,000. That's nonsense. It's much higher than that. The real population of bums in San Francisco is between 10 and 20,000, 10 to 15,000. San Jose, Santa Clara, they say 6,500, much, much higher. Boston, 6,200 bums. Las Vegas, 6,200. Philadelphia, 6,100. Now, I recognize as a compassionate human being who takes care of animals that human beings come first, and I have compassion for human beings, even bums, even junkies. I have compassion for them. However, I have compassion for the social fabric of America. The cities are becoming uninhabitable because of liberalism, which is catering to the bums. What is your solution to the bum problem? I'm going to ask you a question. Here's one. Would rehabilitation bum camps help? Work camps for bums. Rehabilitation, you give them the medical care they need, but you don't give it to them in the streets. You don't let them pollute the hospitals. You don't let them threaten the EMT workers. You build shelters for them outside of city limits, in cheap land, in rural areas, and you house the homeless in these work camps. You give them all the medical care, social services care that they now get, but you do it in a one-stop shopping place. It's much more efficient. It cleans up the streets. What's wrong with that idea? I'll tell you what's wrong with that idea. The lying lawyers, the illegal lawyers, the ACLU. You talk about fake news. You know, the fake news girls are on the run right now. They're terrified. They know the people are on to them. I mean, I've been talking about them for years, but they're frightened now. You look at the Wolfies, the sheepy blitzers. You look at the woodpeckers. They're frightened. They know the people know who they are. They've been exposed. But what about the fake lawyers? What about the fake lawyers who use their law degree to destroy society, primarily those in the American Civil Liberties Union? They have nothing to do with civil and liberties. They're advancing a communistic agenda to destroy the society. Why are they free to ply their illegal trade in this country? Who gave them the power that overrides the power of the people? Who gave a few crazy lawyers in the ACLU the right to give more power to illegal aliens, more power to bums, more power to junkies, more power to molesters, more power to mass murderers than to the average person? Who gave them that power? Nobody. They just took it. We're going to have to blow the lid off this bum story. It has to stop. Trump has to get around to fixing the streets of America. He has to clean up the homeless problem, and there are solutions to it. There are compassionate solutions to the homeless problem. You don't have to just wring your hands and say nothing can be done. There are solutions that can be given for the homeless bum horror. Now, many of them are mentally ill and or criminals hiding in the homeless population. There's a solution to that problem. And one of them is to either reopen the mental hospitals, which is not going to happen, or build entire homeless encampments outside of cities in lands that are inexpensive and move them there against their will with their lawyers. That's right. When Marvin, the ACLU attorney, opens his big fat trap and his big glasses get steamed up with outrage and indignation about how you're violating the constitutional rights of a bum who has the right to defecate in the mailbox or exhibit himself to your 5-year-old daughter, you say to Marvin, you know what, Marvin, you may have a point, but I'm going to ask you something. Why don't you move into the homeless encampment that we're building for them in the middle of the Nevada desert so you can give them the services that they require? We'll fix you up with email. We'll fix you up with Twitter. You can send pictures, whatever you want, Marv. And you could live out there with them and take care of them and their homeless needs out there. You could be their lawyer. Okay, you're going whether you want to or not because you know more about them than anyone else. You've shown that you know more about them, Marvin, from the ACLU. So by government decree, we're moving you into the homeless camp in the middle of the Nevada desert. It'll be air-conditioned, don't worry. We're not there to hurt you, not there to torture you. They're going to get the medical care, the social services care that they need, and they're going to work. They're not just going to sit on their behinds and shoot up drugs. They're going to work. They're going to clean up that camp. They're going to raise the food. They're going to cook the food. They're going to do everything that can be done in that environment to take care of themselves. And at the end of that time period, they will be somewhat rehabilitated, Marv. But you have to be rehabilitated, Marvin. And in order to rehabilitate you, we have to take away your law license, just temporarily, for having abused the taxpayer by using a law in order to destroy the law. You see, Marvin, something you didn't learn at Harvard Law is that in order to have civil rights, you have to have a civil society in order to have those rights. And you've destroyed the civility of our society, Marvin. Homelessness is a misnomer. There's no such thing as homelessness. It's not correct. It's not a correct word. It's a word of the left. The correct word is bum. Bum, vagrant. There used to be vagrancy laws in America. Can you believe there was a time in America that if a bum slept on a bench in Central Park, took up the bench that was put there for hardworking citizens or retirees to sit and enjoy Central Park, a cop came along with a nightstick and tapped him on the shoe and made the bum get up in the morning and move on. He didn't let him lay there on newspaper taking up the whole bench and then walk into a bush like an animal to relieve himself. Nobody would have put up with that kind of behavior. So the cop tapped the bum on the foot. The bum knew to move on, or else he would have been given a shellacking, thrown into a paddy wagon, and put into a police station, and God knows what happened to him then. But it usually encouraged them to go get a job, like as a what? Dishwasher? Does anyone really want to wash dishes? No, but people wash dishes when they're desperate, and they have to. I once washed dishes when I was 14 years old because I lost money in a card game. I was afraid to go home. I lost all the money I had in a neighborhood card game. So I went to work in a luncheonette. I didn't mind. I was glad that the guy gave me the job. He felt bad for me, the street corner up there. He says, all right, Michael, here's the thing. Put your hands in there. I had dishwater up to my, whatever. I worked till midnight. I don't know what I made, a few bucks, who knows. My father called the police. He didn't know where I was. He came in white-faced. He didn't know where I was. Once he saw, there's a funny story. He called the cops. They didn't know where I was. Something happened. And somehow he got the word I was working in the candy store up on the corner there on Union Turnpike. And he came in and he looked over the counter. He didn't say one word other than, I understand, you're working. To him, work was sacred. That was enough. That explained everything. I didn't have to say a word to him. He didn't ask me why I was washing dishes. He didn't ask me, why didn't I call him? He just knew I was working. That was good enough for him. Because there's a dignity to work. And that dignity of work has to be taught to the bums in the streets of our cities. But it has to be taught to the bums in Congress. It has to be taught to the bums in the mayor's offices. It has to be taught to all the bums who steal our hard-earned taxpayer money and do whatever they want with it. That's what has to be done. I'll be right back.
Savage.
The Savage Nation is sponsored by Swiss America, the only company I trust with my financial future. Call 800-289-2646 or SwissAmerica.com. I don't know, the country's falling apart. Criminals running every city in the country. Do you know how much San Francisco spends on bums? Oh, don't call them homeless to me. Homeless implies they're entitled to a home. No one's entitled to a home. You work for a home. Did you know that? Oh, I know. In communist Russia, everyone was entitled to a home. In communist Cuba, they're entitled to a home. Not the kind of home you would live in. So don't tell me about homeless. That's a construct of the Marxist revolution. City of San Francisco, which has the worst per capita bum problem in America, maybe in the world, spends $250 million a year to solve the problem of the bums in the streets. And no one knows where the money goes. I do. They can't track the money, but I can give you some idea where the money goes. There are 8 city departments filled with bureaucrats that oversee 400 contracts to 76 private organizations most of them so-called nonprofits, wait till you see the salaries they make, that deal with the bum problem. They call themselves homeless services, outreach, this and that. These are all liberal departments, all do-gooders, tripping over themselves to show how good they are. And what's even more interesting to me is that one of the sickest, wackiest supervisors in the city, he is so far to the left that he makes, I don't know, pick your most favorite leftist politician. Now go to the left of him by several degrees, and you'll see Supervisor Aaron Peskin in San Francisco. There's not been a progressive idea that he has not floated and run with because he's such a good man. But recently he called 911 because it was in his backyard. You see, a homeless man, a bum, was naked from the waist down. His legs were smeared in feces. And the bum was standing near Mr. Peskin's house on the Filbert Steps on Telegraph Hill, screaming obscenities and blocking the path of passerbys, we have to assume including the esteemed supervisor. Now, of course, the police can't do their job. The city spends $250 million a year. No one knows where the money goes. Same problem, New York City, L.A., Seattle, San Diego, Las Vegas, District of Columbia, Chicago, San Jose, Santa Clara, Boston, Honolulu, Savannah, Santa Ana, Nassau, Suffolk counties, Babylon, Islip, Huntington, New York, St. Petersburg, Clearwater, Largo, Pinellas County, Florida, Santa Rosa, Petaluma, Sonoma County. This is in the wine country. You have no idea what's going on up in the wine country. You have no idea what has happened because of stupid liberalism. I do. But now let's go back to the streets themselves. The average person, I don't care if they're liberal or conservative or this or that, understands that their quality of life is diminished, that they take their life in their hands walking in most districts of San Francisco. At any time, someone can punch you in the chest or stab you or cut your face. If you think I'm making it up, ask the police. Ask the police how many assaults are reported and are not reported in this city. Find out how many people are assaulted directly or indirectly, whether that be assault be a punch, a kick, or assaulted by someone exhibiting themselves in front of their wife or daughter. That is an assault, by the way. And the cops cannot report it as an assault because all the city service agencies that live off the bums have told them that they can't report it as a crime.